It is a Tuesday evening in an affluent suburb of Northern Virginia. Mark, a 42-year-old senior vice president at a mid-sized tech consultancy, pulls his German-engineered SUV into a driveway that cost more to pave than his father's first home. Mark earns $285,000 a year. His wife, an attorney, brings home another $160,000. Their household income places them comfortably within the top 5% of American earners. On paper, Mark is the embodiment of the American dream. He has achieved the terminal velocity of professional success. However, as he sits in the idling car, the silence of the cabin is heavy. Mark is mentally calculating a series of numbers that do not appear on his LinkedIn profile. The mortgage on the $1.2 million home is $6,200. The two vehicle leases total $1,900. Private school tuition for two children takes another $4,500. After taxes, insurance, and the $2,000 monthly lifestyle friction of high-end groceries, club memberships, and lawn maintenance, Mark realizes that a 30-day interruption in his income would result in total systemic collapse. He is an elite earner who possesses almost no actual wealth. He is not a capitalist. He is a high-performance engine that consumes every drop of fuel it generates. This is the quiet, unsettling reality of high-income fragility. A few miles away, in a neighborhood that real estate agents describe as functional, lives David. David is also 42. He works as a senior systems administrator for the county. He earns $115,000 a year. His wife is a teacher earning $65,000. Their household income is less than half of Mark's. David drives a 2018 Japanese sedan that he bought with cash 4 years ago. His home, purchased in 2014, carries a mortgage of $1,800. David and his wife move $4,000 every month into a diversified portfolio of low-cost index funds. David's net worth is $1.1 million. Mark's net worth, once you subtract the liabilities on his depreciating assets, is roughly $150,000, most of which is trapped in home equity he cannot access without selling his primary shelter. Mark is famous in his social circle for his success. David is invisible. Yet, in any economic downturn, David possesses the one thing Mark has traded away: optionality. David can choose to stop working for 3 years without changing his lifestyle. Mark cannot stop for 3 weeks. This disparity is the result of what we can call the high-income fragility trap. This is a structural illusion where the increase in earning capacity is perfectly mirrored or even exceeded by an increase in the cost of the infrastructure of success. It feels rational because each individual decision, the better school, the safer car, the professional neighborhood, seems like a logical investment in one's family and career. In practice, it is the construction of a financial cage. The illusion is built on the conflation of standard of living with quality of life. The former is a measure of consumption. The latter is a measure of freedom. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances, the median net worth for households in the top 10% of income is substantial, but the variance is staggering. A significant portion of these high earners are low wealth relative to their income. They are what researchers often call Henrys. High earners, not rich yet. The tragedy is that many never actually become rich because their burn rate scales linearly with their promotions. To understand why this is structurally destructive, we must look at the math that high earners typically ignore. Consider the concept of maintenance-heavy assets. When Mark purchased his $1.2 million home, he didn't just buy a shelter, he bought a high-maintenance ecosystem. The 1% rule in real estate suggests that a homeowner should set aside 1% of the home's value annually for maintenance. For David, this is $4,000 a year. For Mark, it is $12,000. Over 20 years, assuming a modest 3% inflation in service costs, Mark will spend $322,000 more than David just to keep his roof from leaking and his lawn looking professional. Now, consider the opportunity cost of that capital. If David takes that $8,000 annual difference, the gap between his maintenance costs and Mark's, and invests it in a total stock market index fund, returning a conservative 7% annually, that $8,000 becomes approximately $350,000 over 20 years. Mark's success in buying a larger home hasn't just cost him the purchase price. It has cost him $250,000 in liquid wealth. This compounding effect extends to every category of Mark's life. The Bureau of Labor Statistics' 2023 Consumer Expenditure Survey shows that high-income households spend significantly more on apparel and services and education, often driven by the need to signal status within their professional peer group. If we aggregate the differences in car payments, insurance, school tuition, and social signaling costs, the gap between Mark and David's investable income is roughly $5,000 per month. If David continues to invest $5,000 a month at a 7% return over a 25-year career, he ends with $3.8 million. Mark, who is investing in his lifestyle, ends with a large house he cannot afford to heat and a social circle he can no longer afford to entertain. The math indicates that Mark must earn $450,000 just to achieve the same terminal wealth that David achieves on $180,000. Mark is running a race on a treadmill that is set to a higher incline than he realizes. The psychological layer of this trap is governed by hedonic adaptation and relative income hypothesis. As Mark's income rose, his baseline for what constitutes a normal life shifted. The business class flight became the requirement, not the luxury. The $150 dinner became the standard Tuesday night. Behavioral economics teaches us that humans do not judge their welfare by absolute terms, but by their position relative to their peers. Mark does not feel wealthy because everyone in his cul-de-sac has the same SUV and the same renovated kitchen. He feels average. To feel successful, he must spend more. Modern social media and professional networking have amplified this effect. In the mid-20th century, you compared yourself to your actual neighbors. Today, Mark compares his behind-the-scenes reality to the curated highlight reels of the top 0.1% of global earners. This creates a perpetual deficit mindset. He is constantly signaling a level of wealth he hasn't yet achieved, using the income he hasn't yet earned. Institutions reinforce this behavior because a high-earning debtor is the most profitable client for a bank. Lending standards for professionals are remarkably accommodative. A bank will happily grant Mark a mortgage that consumes 43% of his gross income, knowing that his professional ego will force him to work grueling hours to avoid the public shame of foreclosure. The system is designed to keep Mark in his seat, producing high-value output for his firm and high-value interest payments for his creditors. It is a structural incentive for fragility. The hidden cost of this trap is the total loss of optionality. Optionality is the ability to walk away, to change careers, to take a risk, or to rest. Mark has no optionality. If he is offered a more fulfilling job that pays $150,000, he must decline it. He is locked in to his high salary stress. His risk exposure is massive. If his industry is disrupted by artificial intelligence or a pivot in the global economy, he has no margin for safety. He has traded his freedom for the appearance of success. We must reframe the mental model of what it means to be wealthy. The correct metaphor for wealth is not a large mountain of gold, but a well-built dam. Income is the water flowing into the reservoir. Consumption is the water being released through the spillway. If you build a massive dam but leave the spillway wide open, the reservoir will never fill. True wealth is the depth of the water in the reservoir, not the volume of the river flowing in. David has a deep reservoir. Mark has a roaring river and an empty basin. To escape the high-income fragility trap, one must decouple consumption from earning. This requires a shift from signaling wealth to accumulating it. There are 3 core principles for this transition. First, identify and cap the infrastructure of success. The house and the car are the 2 largest contributors to financial friction. By choosing a home that costs 2 times your annual income instead of 4 times, you create a permanent structural advantage that compounds every month. It is easier to save money by having a smaller mortgage than it is to save money by skipping lattes. Second, embrace strategic invisibility. The need to signal status is a tax on your future self. By opting out of the professional arms race, you retain the capital that your peers are wasting on depreciating status symbols. Wealth is the money you don't spend. It is the cars you don't buy and the watches you don't wear. Third, focus on the maintenance to asset ratio. Before purchasing any asset, calculate the annual cost of owning it. If an asset requires a high percentage of your income just to exist, whether it's a vacation home, a boat, or a high-maintenance social club membership, it is an anchor, not an asset. On paper, Mark's life looks like the ultimate goal. In practice, he is a prisoner of his own success. He spends his days managing people and his nights managing debt. He is exhausted. Not because his work is hard, but because the stakes of failure are too high. He has no room for error. The goal of personal finance is not to see how much you can spend. It is to see how much of your life you can own. Most people spend 40 years trading their time for money, and then spend that money to buy things that take up even more of their time. It is a closed loop of footy. This minute of new will see some. True wealth is the ability to wake up in the morning and realize that your presence is not required by anyone but yourself. It is the ability to say no to a toxic boss, a boring project, or a soul-crushing commute. That freedom isn't found in a higher salary. It is found in the GAP, between what you earn and what you need. As Mark drives his luxury SUV out of his driveway the next morning, he is heading to a job he no longer enjoys to pay for a house he only spends 8 hours a day in, mostly while asleep. He is a high earner. He is a success. Would you like to examine the data regarding the 2-income trap and how dual career households have actually become more financially precarious than the single earner households of the 1970s? Or should we look at the specific investment strategies for the invisible wealthy, who prioritize asset to maintenance ratios?